Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand today. And I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, my name is Crystal Howard. I'm 40 years old, and I'm based in Austin, Texas. A little bit about me, how I came to be in where I'm at today. All started several years ago, actually about 5 years ago, before the George Floyd situation had happened. I had been working in corporate America. My previous background was I have about 10 years plus of sales experience. And as soon as I got into the IT sales world, is when I started to begin to deal with racial discrimination as well as gender discrimination as well. It's dated back to after I had my second child and went back to work. I had entered the workplace. I would talk about sports. I played sports in college, so that's what I did to bring a sense of belonging in the workplace. And I had only been working at the company for about 2 months when I was on a new hire orientation in California. And during that time period, I was with two peers of mine who had just started. One was a man of color, and the other one was a white male. And we were just connecting and talking, and I had become friends with them. And then all of a sudden, a gentleman had come up to me and had asked me a little bit about my cultural background, which I thought was very odd because no one has ever asked me that in the workplace. Most of the time, people make assumptions about my cultural background, but I've never been asked. And then he started to get very angry and started to try to argue with me about the fact that I wasn't. I'm 100% Latina. I guess you would consider me Afro-Latina because I am a person of color. I identify as a Black female, but I'm 100% Dominican. My parents are from Dominican Republic. And when he continued to argue with me, he ended up calling me the N-word. That was the first time in my life that I've ever been called the N-word. It was still talking about it to this day. I still get upset. It had a traumatic impact in who I was at that time. It was 10 years ago when I was in my early 30s, and I spent a lot of time asking myself, why was this happening to me? I guess I was in a state of shock that I didn't actually have any sort of reaction. About a week later, the HR department had reached out to me and had asked for some few minutes to connect with me. And the two people that I was with, the two males that I was with, actually, when that situation happened, they immediately got involved and started to, say things to the person who had made this comment to me. But I don't really remember because I think I was in a state of shock. I was embarrassed, ashamed. And at that time, I didn't know many people at the company at that time. So I didn't react. I think, blacked out of this situation because it was pretty traumatic. I was so taken back by this situation, but When HR reached out to me, they had informed me that these two gentlemen had submitted this complaint to HR. I had not submitted the complaint because I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if this person, I was scared of retaliation and had no idea what was coming. But then all of a sudden, she told me that these two people who were my allies had already submitted a complaint about it and they wanted to confirm the details of that event, that incident. So I had confirmed that all the things they said was true, had shared my experience. And then within a week of that time period, I had learned that they fired this person. Though I was very happy that there was a resolution, the amount of internal trauma that I felt, uh, I just wasn't prepared for. I went to a therapist over the situation, and I actually eventually left the company because I just couldn't work in a place where I was the only female out of, 10 or 15 males. Um, the next company I went to, I had had a similar situation that had happened with a leader um, from a different cultural background. And what I was facing in that situation was I had found out that the role that I was doing, I was leading a team of 3 people and I was managing my own sales accounts. When that happened, I had asked for more money because I was doing 2 roles and they wouldn't give me more money. So what I did was I tried to make as much money as possible because I was making a commission off of my 3 salespeople and then as well as making a salary for being a manager. Um, and so I ended up finding out that my counterpart, who happened to be a good friend of mine, who became a good friend of mine that was doing the same job, that he was getting paid $15,000 more than me. And I tried to address the leadership team and it didn't go over very well. Um, they ended up firing me from the job and I had had a sense that I was being discriminated against. So for months, um, I was sending my I was constantly in touch with our CFO because they had been owing me 9 months of back pay of commissions for the team that I was supporting, that I was supposed to get a piece of the pie, as well as for my own work that I was putting in. I had warned my husband that, this time I wasn't going to run away, that I was going to face the situation head on, and I was willing to get a lawyer if I needed to. But I had a strong sense that eventually they were going to fire me. One day I came into work and I noticed that my mouse was jiggling and I wasn't moving it, that somebody was taking over my computer, looking through my inbox. And I had realized that they probably noticed that I had been CCing the entire time for months of me asking for updates on when I was going to be paid. I had been BCCing my personal email that entire time. When I left, that day I ended up getting fired. When I left, they ended up paying me. I was the first person that ever happened to that had left the company that was able to get the full amount of money that they owed. And I think it was just because they knew that I had documentation showing that they were refusing to pay me the money that they owed me for 9 months. After leaving that company, I went on to work at another company, decided that I didn't want to do work in IT anymore because I just felt that it was not a good place for my experience of being a rare female as well as a woman of color. So I decided to go into healthcare sales. I had worked at the company for 3 years until another manager had really had been trying to avoid, trying to find ways where I couldn't grow within the company. And I was excelling in all fronts, winning all these accolades. So I decided to leave the company. And that's when I came to Amazon. About 2 years ago, when the pandemic happened, is when the George Floyd situation happened. And I remember our entire leadership team hosting a town hall. And all of our entire leadership team, who were not of color, they were all white, had started to cry about the George Floyd situation and had asked that all of the people of color share how they were feeling through the situation. And I immediately, there was something that was inside of me that just brought out so much hate that I was angry about all these years of dealing with discrimination in the workplace. And I never got any sort of resolution, I just kind of ran away from it. When I learned that my particular team was going to start to take actions to fix things and to create a more diverse leadership team, you know, I was like, oh, this could be just the flavor of the month. Maybe in another month, this will go away and then they will forget this. But the people who are most heavily impacted in my org will never forget because this is our life that we live. And as months went on, I noticed that there was all these things happening, but nothing was really having an impact on our Black employee community. And that's when I started getting involved. I started to see performative allyship. And that's when I really realized that I'm no longer going to sit on the sidelines and watch it happen anymore. I'm going to stand up for what I think is right. It was the first time that I felt liberated to for my voice to be heard in this unique situation that was happening worldwide where DEI was getting so much airtime, media attention, as well as a lot of attention and discussions in the workplace. So I decided to just do something in my workplace. And with my leader support, I decided I'm going to get involved in DE&I. And as I got more involved and started advocating for all my fellow Black employees, I started to grow passion that I realized that I couldn't go back. During that time frame, I had a health situation that happened that made me realize um, it was a situation that I had taken very lightly, and then learned that it was more serious than I expected. And I had thought, oh my God, like if I die tomorrow, this is not how I want to be remembered. I don't want to be remembered as someone who just was a salesperson. I want to be remembered as somebody who did something to make the lives of my kids even better. So that's how I got involved in DE&I. It's I don't need drive. I know that with DE&I, it's something that you have to be driven every day. It's hard, emotional work that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. But one thing that I realized in the experience that I've had so far in being in a DE&I professional in just the year past is that I always focus on the small wins. Progress is better than zero progress. And I know that this will take time to have a larger impact. But if I just focus on the small wins and keep adding layers on top of that, that I can be the impact that I wish to see in the workplace and make it impactful for my fellow Black employees. So that's how I got involved in DE&I. It's something that I live, breathe, and I think about every day. I don't think that that's something you could really teach somebody. You just have to have a passion for it. And I feel like my passion driven around DE&I has been really centered on the fact that it's part of who I am. I never thought in a million years that I would be working in DE&I after my experiences, that I would even ever have that opportunity. I remember 10 years ago, me riding my car home every day from work, hysterical crying, super upset, asking myself, why did this happen to me? And it took about 10 years to realize why, because God had a better plan for me. And working in DE&I has been a blessing. And it's been just amazing because now I feel that all those things that happened to me, I could pave the way forward so it never happens to anyone behind me. And I feel that that's really was my life purpose. I just didn't know it at the time, but I spent a lot of time asking myself why. Um, it takes a lot of time to overcome trauma of that level, but I'm very determined to create more diverse, equitable, and inclusive work environments for my peers. And I'm highly motivated and driven to get the hard work done. It's what drives my passion is reliving the history that I experienced and knowing that there's many other people like me that have gone through the same trauma and feel alone in those situations. And now I feel that it's my job to be an advocate for those people and create a space for them to grow, learn, and feel they can bring their authentic selves to the workplace. So that's truly my story.
Wow. Crystal, you have been through a lot. A lot of people of color experience this on a day by day by day basis. This is the condition of being brown skinned and different, especially when you're in a predominantly white environment. Your work is truly cut out for you. And I feel that everything you've gone through, there is a reason for it, right? Like you've said, you are now in this space to make sure that nobody else experiences the same thing.
Hmm.
So let's break it down a little bit and let's go back to that very first major incident where 10 years ago you felt you were discriminated.
Hmm.
If you could have had somebody give you advice at that point, at that moment in time, what three nuggets of wisdom would you give based on what you know now? Just in case there's somebody listening who's in that position right now and have no idea how to navigate the space.
I think one is to have respect for yourself and demand it from others. I don't think that I demanded that at all. Um, I think that I was too scared because I was really young, and it's really hard to be young in a workplace and feel valued, feel like you're taken seriously. So I think that the first thing I would say is demand the same respect that you give to others. And only you can set that tone with the people you're working with or leadership teams that your hiring manager or anyone that you come in contact with in the workplace. You deserve and demand that respect if you're giving it back. And I think the second nugget would be is not to run away. I would change jobs just because of the uncomfortableness that I felt, because I didn't feel that I had the tools and resources or even the maturity level to know how to handle those situations. Because though these things happened to me in the workplace, my childhood did not emulate this at all. I actually never even looked at myself and saw, I never looked at myself that way until I came into corporate America. I truly believe that I would be treated like an equal because of the way that I was raised in the community that I came from. I came from a very diverse community where I had amazing coaches, teachers that were all different backgrounds, and they never treated me differently. So I never had racism as a child. Like I rarely ever saw that in my life. So I would say that that would be the second thing. And third, there's a way to hold people accountable for what they say, that you can do it in a professional manner that doesn't come across as, I always am worried about communicating in a way that I'm going to be the stereotypical Black female, that she's angry and loud. So I spent a lot of time thinking through my communication style and how I want to articulate myself. Because if I'm communicating in a professional fashion and still saying what I need to get out, there's nothing really anyone can say if I'm doing it professionally. I have that right to have that voice. So that would be the last thing that I would say of the advice I would give.
That is awesome. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes it's just not being equipped with the right tools, with the right skills. Like unlike you, I grew up in Rhodesia before Zimbabwe had independence. We had racial segregation, just like apartheid South Africa. Black people couldn't walk on one side of the street. You couldn't use the water fountains. If you got on a bus, you had to get on the back. I'm 55. So I've lived through that. I lived in apartheid South Africa before they had independence, worked in an IT team just like you were. And one of the things I learned really quickly is that a lot of racist people actually don't even realize they're being racist. And my boss, we would be sitting in a boardroom, and if it was time for tea and coffee, he would look to me and say, "Gertrude, it's time for tea and coffee." So I had a disadvantage that I was the only woman on the team as well. So there were these expectations of my roles. And I would laugh and cross my legs and say, "Yes, Jack, I need mine black with 2 sugars. Thank you." And he would blush and go red because I would catch him doing things, but I found that if I absorbed it, I wouldn't be able to function. So I turned it into jokes, and it turned into the office joke until I broke his habits because he was doing it habitually. The way he treated me was the way he treated his servants at home. So people of color do deal with a lot of issues. Now you're working for Amazon. That is a very big organization.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about how Amazon is dealing with diversity, inclusion, and belonging. What programs, what structures do they have in place to support people of color?
So I will say that that's the one thing I love about Amazon, and I'm glad. At first I wasn't really excited when I got the job at Amazon because I was like, "Oh, this is just going to be another IT company experience." But it wasn't. It's actually very different at Amazon. We're a very decentralized company, though everybody works under Amazon. Different divisions at Amazon operate as their own separate little company. So the culture in which AWS might have will be very different from Amazon Business Division, will be very different from global supply chain. And that's the org that I'm in right now. Um, and what I like about Amazon is we have LPs that we live by. It's a very entrepreneur type of environment. If you see something could be done better, you don't need to ask permission. You can take bias for action and get it done and come up with some solutions. That's probably the number one most thing I love about this company is that. And Amazon spends a lot of money and time providing a lot of resources when it comes to DE&I. It's not just about serving the community that the customers we serve. We invest money into minority owned businesses. There's a lot of pumping of money to help minorities start their own businesses on Amazon's website. There's a lot of support that they get. Also, not only that, but we also have our affinity groups, which most people call them employee resource groups, for our Black employees, for our Latinos, for our LGBT community, for people with disabilities, for people who have families, for moms, for females. There's so many groups. And those groups were set up to bring a sense of belonging, but they're also focused on professional development as well. And the professional development component is huge because you want to feel like you can come into work every day. And if you're the only one on your team, you have that affinity group as a support mechanism to help develop your career. I had started at Amazon 3 years ago and came into a sales role under Amazon Business. But if it really wasn't for the Ben group, the Black employee network, I probably wouldn't have had that level of sense of belonging, have been able to be focused on giving back to the community, as well as being able to develop my career and making the transition from sales to DE&I. So Amazon spends a lot of money and a lot of time. And recently, about 2 years ago, I think it's less than 2 years ago, we launched two additional LPs. And LPs are leadership principles that our employees are evaluated on, promoted on. It's kind of like the the bread and butter of everything that we do as an employees around our leadership principles. And so just try two that were added were strive to be Earth's best employer, which is around DE&I. It's actually attracted a lot more diverse talent because we added that LP. Meaning when we hire people, we ask them questions around the leadership principles. They have to be able to share examples of where they demonstrated this leadership principle. That's how we interview at Amazon. And then we also add strive to broader responsibility. That means that the communities in which we're serving, we have a climate pledge. Now we have an indigenous pledge for our indigenous group. So there's a lot. That's more of a, you know, to be honest, it's just how are you as a person in your community? Are you giving back to your community and being a good human being to make the world a better place? So it's a corporate responsibility that each Amazonian has.
Wow, that's a lot. That is absolutely amazing and very, very inspiring to hear that Amazon has put structures in place to support DEI. Now, just before we started this interview, we were talking a little bit about how people are coping with difficult situations in the workplace. You brought up a term that I found really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about that because I have seen it in a lot of organizations. Let's go into that a little bit.
So I think that the pandemic, okay, so 2 years ago, when the pandemic hit and a lot of people lost their lives, I think what changed in the workplace was people started to reevaluate, am I really happy doing the work that I'm doing? It was almost like a pause moment for most people because one, they got to go virtual and have that flexibility, that work schedule flexibility so that they can create more work life balance. But also, I think it was a moment that I actually went through myself when I had the health issue, was around that time that you start to reevaluate where you're at and why are you in this role. People want more meaningful work. They want to have a purpose in their work. And I think by going through what we all went through the pandemic, of seeing thousands of people lose their lives, a lot of times when something tragic happens to you or a health condition happens to you, you start to really reevaluate your purpose in life. Is where I want to spend my time? Like, is where I'm passionate? And a lot of people left their jobs to do something that they were passionate about. And it kind of gave employees the leverage um, to decide what they wanted, because now, as we're getting out of the pandemic, as we're officially out of it, there's a labor shortage. So now I'm hearing more and more that people are doing what's called quiet, what did I call it? Quiet or silent,
You said silent resignation?
or like it's called silent, not resignation, it's silent. I forgot the verbiage that I used, but it's called silent quitting. And if you listen to TikTok or follow TikTok, there's been a ton of videos where people are sharing that they're silent quitting, meaning I will work in this role, but I'm not going to give you more than 40 hours of my time. I'm going to give you the bare minimum to keep my job and to get paid. But if you're asking for extra from me, I'm now disconnecting and saving my mental energy for whether maybe it's something that I'm very passionate about and I'm figuring that out, or it's something that relates to me wanting more work life balance with my family. I'm now not going to give up so many more hours to my work. And I think it's a generational thing as well, because my generation that I'm in grew up saying, hey, you have to pay your dues. You always have to give in more than 40 hours a work week to show that you're valuable, that you deserve a promotion. And I just think that that's phasing out, and people are finding that they want more meaningful work and they want to find their purpose. I think that's what the difference is, and people are taking their mental health more seriously than years prior.
That is just awesome. Now, let's wind up with two questions. We're going to have a little thought experiment, and I'm going to teleport you into the future. You're now 100 years old, and you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, and you're reflecting back on your life. If the present you could teleport into the future to have a conversation with this wise woman, what would you say to her based on how you are living your life?
Oh my God, that's a hard question. I think I would tell her to remember her why. I actually have a post-it note all the time on top of my desk that says, remember my why. Like, why am I doing this to begin with? What is the impact I'm hoping to achieve? And to not forget what my purpose is, because this is when I become 100 years old, this is what I'm going to remember, is where did I spend and invest my time? And also, I would tell myself to have boundaries. It's okay to have boundaries, and it's okay to say no, and to put my mental health first and to put myself first. A lot of people don't put themselves first as much, especially females. So those are like the three things that I would say.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, we are all being guided by the future selves we want to be. And I believe that we have all the knowledge, all the skills to get us there. Sometimes, as women, we have to trust ourselves because that knowledge is within. So, just going back to yourself and asking yourself for guidance, your future self will take you there. So, thank you for sharing that. So, what are your parting thoughts for us today? Is there a question I should have asked you and I didn't? What will you leave us with today?
I guess I would leave you, depending on the audience, but I think this is important for anybody, is try to dig into what your why is. Wherever is your why is your purpose. Whatever keeps you up at night and doesn't allow you to let it go when things get hard is where you're meant to be. Um, and I've learned that as hard as DE&I can be, it is a very emotional, draining experience, but the reward is so worth it. And I think you need to really, truly dig into yourself and understand who you are and understand like what's going to get you excited every day. What is going to keep you passionate about life? Because live not to just live and exist, live to have a purpose and create an impact. If you're not growing, then you're not living. As Tony Robbins says, that's somebody that I follow and recommend that anybody follows all the stuff that he says, all his books. He's pretty amazing.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Absolutely
Thank you.
amazing connecting with you today. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Her Story Circle is attracting some phenomenal women coming from all over the world, sharing their wisdom, their knowledge to uplift and inspire us. Tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing woman. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Crystal, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.